The words struck me like a punch to the gut. Once she foots the bill for our getaway, I'll stick her in a care home. I overheard this when my daughter-in-law, Lisa, forgot to end our call. My heart raced. I'd already paid for her plane ticket, one way at her insistence. But as I sat there, reeling from her words, I decided to lock down her access to my accounts. I'm grateful you're here to hear this. Stick with my story to the end and let me know what city you're reading from. I'd love to see how far my tale travels. I was in my cozy kitchen, clutching the cordless phone that had buzzed just minutes earlier. Lisa had called to confirm a small detail about her upcoming trip to Italy, a romantic escape she described with my son, David, to rekindle their spark after 14 years of marriage. I'd been overjoyed to cover the cost. At 70, what was my savings for, if not to bring joy to my family? The trip set me back $7,500, but Lisa's beaming smile when I offered to pay made it feel worthwhile. She'd wrapped me in a warm embrace, calling me the kindest mother-in-law she could imagine, but she hadn't hung up properly. The line stayed open, and her voice carried through, sharp and unguarded, likely speaking to her cousin Megan, judging by the familiar cadence. I swear, Megan, this woman is so easy to play, Lisa said, her tone crackling with disdain. She just dropped $7,000 without a second thought. David says we should hold off on the care home talk until after the trip, but I'm honestly done pretending to care about her endless stories and complaints. My hand shook. I should have hung up, given her privacy, but the icy edge in her voice, a side of Lisa I'd never heard, rooted me to the spot. The best part? She actually thinks we're thankful, she went on, her laugh twisting my stomach. Does she really believe we want to spend our vacation thinking of her? This trip is about escaping all that baggage. When we're back, all relaxed and glowing, we'll start scouting facilities. I've already got 3 budget places lined up that accept Medicaid. I collapsed into a chair, my legs giving out. Medicaid? I wasn't destitute. I had a nest egg, a paid-off house, and investments. Why would Lisa be researching Medicaid facilities unless you plan to strip me bare first? It's perfect timing, she continued. She's been having those forgetful moments, misplacing her glasses, retelling the same old stories. It'll be a breeze to convince everyone she needs round-the-clock care. David's already on board. He's fed up with her daily calls, her invites for dinner, her little requests for help. He says it's time for professionals to step in. Those forgetful moments weren't dementia. They were loneliness. I misplaced my glasses because my mind was on how empty my house felt. I repeated stories because I craved connection, someone to hear me. I called them daily because they were all I had left since my husband, George, passed 4 years ago. We'll give it a month after we return, Lisa said. Make her feel needed one last time with some fake crisis. Maybe say, David needs a medical procedure. Get her to sign over power of attorney for her own safety. Then, bam, she's in a facility where experts can care for her better than we ever could. Her sarcasm dripped through the word experts. She wasn't thinking of my well-being. She wanted me out of the picture while keeping my money. The house is worth at least $280,000, she added. Add her savings and investments, and David figures it's close to $450,000 total. Not bad for tolerating her clinginess a bit longer. $450,000. They'd tallied my worth like I was already gone. My chest tightened, and for a moment I feared a heart attack. The betrayal, the shock, it was crushing. But as Lisa's voice droned on, a new feeling stirred within me, cold and resolute. I just need to keep up the doting daughter-in-law act until after the trip, she said. Smile when she drags out those old photos of David as a kid for the millionth time. Act like I care about her knitting club or her garden. Pretend I'm so grateful for her generous gift. Her words hung in the air, and I finally set the phone down, my hands still trembling. The late afternoon light filtered through the kitchen blinds, casting shadows across the countertops George had refinished when we bought this house 30 years ago. The silence felt heavy, no longer just lonely, it was menacing. I was alone, and the people I'd trusted most saw me as nothing more than a bank account with an inconvenient old woman attached. But as I sat there, something shifted. Lisa and David thought they were clever, plotting my future behind my back. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I might be 70, but I wasn't helpless. I wasn't confused, and I wasn't going to let them erase me. God, if she only knew how much I hate faking gratitude for money that should have been ours ages ago. Lisa's voice sneered through the phone. The words seared into me. I'd worked 38 years, scrimped and saved, skipped fancy dinners and dream vacations to build a legacy for David. Yet, here they were, acting like my savings were their birthright, while I was still alive, still sharp, still in control. The best part, Lisa went on, her laugh sharp and vicious. She'll probably thank us for locking her away in some safe facility. She's so desperate for our approval, she'll convince herself it's love. We won't even feel bad because she'll be grateful. That cruel, calculating laugh shattered the trance that had kept me glued to the phone. With trembling fingers, I ended the call and sank into my kitchen chair, the evening light filtering through the windows George had lovingly restored when we bought this house 32 years ago. The silence, once merely lonely, now felt like a threat. I was alone in this home, defenseless against people who saw me as a walking ATM with an annoying old woman attached. I thought back to all the moments Lisa had praised my baking, asked for my pie recipes, or brought her kids over for grandma time. Were those all lies? Every warm hug, every "we love you, Mom, Eleanor," every teary-eyed thank you, had it all been a carefully rehearsed act? My hands shook as I pulled my purse onto the table and opened my checkbook. There it was, in my neat cursive, a $7,500 check to Bella Vista Travel Co., written 3 days ago. I'd been so proud to fund their Italian getaway, so touched by Lisa's excitement. The bitter irony stung. I'd bankrolled their dream trip, the prelude to shoving me aside like a worn-out chair. But as I stared at that checkbook, the fog of shock lifted, replaced by a razor-sharp clarity I hadn't felt in years. Lisa and David thought they were masterminds, plotting my future in secret, tallying my worth like vultures circling a carcass. They had no idea who they were up against. I might be 70, but I wasn't frail. I wasn't confused. And I sure as hell wasn't going to slip quietly into some care home they'd picked out. I walked to my bedroom and opened the antique cedar box where George used to store his important documents. Tucked behind my mother's old cameo necklace was a business card, slightly yellowed, but still legible. Patricia Coleman, estate attorney. She'd handled George's will 4 years ago and told me to reach out if I ever needed help. That moment had come. Lisa wanted to play games with my money and my life? Fine. But she was about to discover this game had rules she didn't understand. and I was a far better player than she could ever hope to be. The phone felt solid in my hand as I dialed Patricia's number. Lisa and David thought they held all the power, but they'd made a fatal mistake. They'd underestimated me. Patricia answered, her voice warm, but tinged with concern. Eleanor, you sound shaken. Is everything okay? I told her I needed to discuss urgent estate planning and asked for an appointment. She cleared her schedule for 8:30 the next morning. Sleep eluded me that night. Every time I closed my eyes, Lisa's mocking laugh echoed, her casual cruelty replaying, her jabs about my foggy moments, her confidence that I'd be grateful for a care home. I sifted through months of memories, searching for clues I'd overlooked. How often had Lisa shot David a sly glance when I retold a story? How many times had they sighed behind my back when I asked for help with my tablet or shared snapshots from my gardening group? I thought I was weaving them into my life. They'd seen it as proof I was losing my grip. The worst part was recalling how hard I'd worked to be the ideal mother-in-law. When David introduced Lisa 14 years ago, I vowed not to be the meddling type. I gave them room to breathe, respected their choices, offered help without overstepping. I thought I'd built a bond with Lisa, a relationship rooted in mutual care. But now, lying in the dark, I saw it all differently. Lying in the dark, I thought I'd forged a genuine bond with Lisa, but now those memories felt tainted, reshaped by the truth of her betrayal. I recalled the time she'd admired my sapphire necklace, a 25th anniversary gift from George. "It's stunning, Mom Eleanor," she'd said. "It would look perfect with my gown for the vow renewal we're planning." Touched that she'd want something of mine for such a special moment, I'd handed it over right then. But the vow renewal never happened. Lisa just kept the necklace. Then there was my mother's porcelain tea set, meant to be a family heirloom. "David's so lucky to come from a family with treasures like this," Lisa had sighed. "I grew up with nothing so elegant. Within days, I'd pressed her to take it for their home. "You'll enjoy it more than I do," I'd insisted. Yet they ate off disposable plates, and the tea set sat untouched in a display cabinet, like a prize she'd won. The pattern was clear now, though I'd been blind to it before. Lisa would praise something, drop a wistful hint about her own lack, and I'd rush to offer it up. She'd protest just enough to make me insist, then accept with crocodile tears and effusive thanks. I'd felt so fulfilled by my generosity, so proud to share beautiful things with my family. Now I saw it for what it was, calculated manipulation from the start. Patricia Coleman's office was much as I remembered it from 4 years ago. Deep navy armchairs, shelves lined with legal tomes, an air of calm authority. But Patricia herself had aged, her hair more silver than brown, and when she saw me, her professional warmth gave way to genuine worry. "Eleanor, you look exhausted. What's wrong?" I'd rehearsed my words, but in her office, they spilled out in a torrent. I told her about the phone call, Lisa's scheme to put me in a care home, her cold calculations of my assets. Patricia listened silently, jotting notes, her face growing sterner with each revelation. When I finished, she set her pen down and leaned back. "Eleanor, I need to ask something delicate. Are you experiencing any memory lapses, confusion, or cognitive issues that could lend credence to their claims?" The question stung, but I knew why she asked. "I misplace my glasses now and then," I admitted. "But I'm 70, not 90. My mind's sharp. I can recall conversations from decades ago. My doctor gave me a clean bill of health last month. Patricia nodded. We'll need to document that thoroughly. But tell me, what do you want to do about this? Confronting them now might push them to act faster. I'd wrestled with this all night. No confrontation yet, I said. I want to protect myself first. Make sure they can't touch my money or force me into a facility. Wise move, Patricia said, grabbing a notepad. Let's review your estate. Who has power of attorney? No one. George and I never set one up, and I didn't think about it after he passed. That's good. Who's listed as your beneficiary? David's the primary on everything. My savings, about $180,000. Investments, around $140,000. The house, worth maybe $290,000. And a life insurance policy for $90,000. Patricia scribbled the figures. So, roughly $700,000 total. That's significant enough to tempt trouble. She looked up, her eyes steady. Eleanor, this is tough, but do you believe David's aware of Lisa's plan? The question pierced me. David, my only child, who used to snuggle against me during thunderstorms, who'd bring me wilting daisies like they were treasures. But that boy was now a man who, according to Lisa, saw his mother as a burden. She said he's on board, I whispered, that he's tired of my calls, my visits. Patricia's gaze softened. I'm so sorry, Eleanor. That must be heartbreaking. It is, I said, straightening. But I can't let it stop me from protecting myself. You're right, she replied, pulling files from a drawer. Patricia Coleman laid out a plan with precision. First, we'll draft a robust power of attorney that requires 2 independent physicians to confirm any cognitive impairment before it can take effect. Second, we'll establish a revocable trust, transferring your assets with clear instructions about your care preferences. Third, we'll create an advance directive stating you're not to be placed in a care facility unless you're physically unable to manage independently. How long will this take? If we act fast, we can have it all in place within a week, Patricia replied. But Eleanor, there's another consideration. If Lisa and David are scheming to have you declared incompetent, they might challenge these documents. We need recent medical and psychological evaluations to prove your mental sharpness. Anger flared at the memory of Lisa's dismissive remarks about my foggy moments. Can you recommend someone? I asked. Doctor. Elizabeth Harper specializes in geriatric assessments, Patricia said. Her evaluations are court admissible and highly respected. I'll call her office to get you in this week. As Patricia outlined the strategy, a feeling I hadn't known in months surged through me. Control. For too long, I drifted through life, letting Lisa and David dictate family gatherings, holiday plans, even what gifts to get for the grandkids. I'd thought I was being flexible, but I'd been surrendering my authority bit by bit. One more thing, Patricia said, gathering her papers. You mentioned they're going on this Italian trip you funded. When do they leave? Next Thursday, I replied. They'll be gone for 2 weeks? Patricia's smile wasn't pitying. It was tactical. Perfect. That gives us time to lock everything down while they're away. By the time they return, you'll be legally untouchable. Leaving her office, I felt lighter than I had in years. The morning sun seemed sharper, the air crisper. For the first time since George's death, I wasn't just the grieving widow craving scraps of affection or the convenient grandmother bankrolling family dreams. I was Eleanor Mitchell, a woman who'd worked 38 years, raised a son, endured loss, and refused to be cast aside like an outdated appliance. Lisa and David thought they were cunning, orchestrating my future in secret. They didn't realize their target was about to become their greatest obstacle. They wanted to play games with my life? Fine. But I'd been navigating life's challenges far longer than they had, and I knew how to win. The next few days were a whirlwind of calculated performance and covert preparation. I had to keep up my usual warmth with Lisa and David while quietly fortifying my defenses. It was draining, but oddly thrilling. Every smile I forced, every kind word I offered was now part of my own strategy. On Tuesday afternoon, Lisa called to confirm last-minute trip details. "Mom, Eleanor, you're sure about covering the travel insurance too? It's an extra $250, but David thinks it's wise, just in case." "Of course, dear," I said, keeping my voice honey-sweet. "I want you both to enjoy every moment worry-free." "You're a saint," Lisa gushed. "We'd be lost without you." "Oh, and I was thinking, maybe you shouldn't be alone in that big house while we're gone. Should I ask my cousin Megan to check in? She could even stay over if you're feeling lonely." My stomach tightened. Megan would be Lisa's watchdog, reporting on my every move, my visitors, my mail, my routines. "That's kind of you," I replied, "but I'm fine. My knitting club and garden group keep me plenty busy." "Well, if you change your mind, just call Megan. I'll give her your number before we go." After hanging up, I sat at my kitchen table, feeling like I'd stepped into a thriller novel. Lisa was already setting up surveillance, likely hoping to collect evidence of confusion or frailty. But I could play that game too. Wednesday morning, I visited Dr. Elizabeth Harper's office in a bustling medical complex downtown. The waiting room was a mix of elderly patients and their adult children. I watched closely. Some kids were attentive, asking questions, jotting notes. Others were distracted, scrolling phones while their parents spoke with the doctor. Dr. Elizabeth Harper was a petite woman with sharp precision and warm eyes framed by delicate silver glasses. She spent nearly 2 hours with me, running a battery of memory tests, cognitive assessments, and a detailed review of my medical history. She had me recall lists of objects, tackle simple math problems, sketch geometric shapes, and discuss recent news. "Mrs. Mitchell," she said, as we wrapped up, "your cognitive abilities are remarkable for any age, let alone 70. Your memory is crisp, your reasoning solid, and your judgment sound. I'll prepare a detailed report confirming your mental competency." "Doctor, one question," I said. "If someone tried to have me declared incompetent, what would they need to prove?" Her face grew solemn. "They'd need medical proof of severe cognitive decline, documented examples of risky decision-making, and statements from people close to you. Based on today's assessment, anyone making that claim would need to fabricate evidence." That afternoon, I returned to Patricia Coleman's office to sign the documents she'd prepared. The power of attorney required 2 independent doctors to verify any cognitive decline. The trust safeguarded my assets, ensuring no one could claim I was unfit when I set it up. The advance directive clearly stated I'd only enter a care facility if I was physically incapable of living independently. "Eleanor," Patricia said as I signed the final page, "we need to consider one more thing. What if they try emotional manipulation? Say you're harming David or being unfair to your grandchildren." I'd been mulling this over. David's kids, Sophie, 16, and Ethan, 14, were wonderful, but I barely saw them anymore. Lisa always had reasons they couldn't visit: school projects, sports, or vague, busy schedules. The kids hardly know me now, I said, my voice heavy. Lisa's kept them at a distance for years. Patricia nodded. That's a common tactic. Manipulators isolate their target from other family to tighten their control, making you more dependent on them. Thursday morning arrived swiftly. Lisa and David were set to leave for the airport at 11 o'clock, and Lisa insisted on stopping by for coffee first. I want a proper goodbye, she'd said. And could you share your recipe for those oatmeal raisin cookies? I love to try them at the hotel. She arrived at 9:30, radiant in a chic travel outfit, her hair freshly styled, nails manicured, a designer handbag slung over her shoulder that likely cost more than a month's groceries. Mom. Eleanor, you look great, she said, hugging me tightly. Are you excited for us? This trip is finally happening. I'm so happy for you both, I replied, pouring coffee into my everyday mugs. I had learned not to use my best porcelain around Lisa. I got you a little something, she said, sliding a small gift box across the table. Inside was a cheap charm bracelet, the kind you'd find at a mall kiosk for $25. I just spent $7,500 on their Italian escape, and this was her token of gratitude. It's lovely, dear, I said, forcing a smile. I thought you could wear it and think of us while we're away, she said, leaning in with a conspiratorial grin. David's so thrilled. He's been so stressed at work, and this trip is just what he needs. You know how anxious he gets. I did know. David had always been prone to nerves, even as a boy. But I also knew his recent stress stemmed from Lisa's pressure to maintain a lifestyle beyond their means, always leaning on me to bridge the gap. What are you most looking forward to? I asked, playing the role of the doting mother-in-law. Oh, everything, Lisa gushed. Venice, Florence, Barcelona. We're doing a vineyard tour in Chianti, and David booked a pasta-making class in Bologna. The hotel in Florence has this gorgeous spa I can't wait to try. As she rambled about their itinerary, I mentally tallied the costs. The $7,500 I'd paid was just the start. They'd likely rack up another $4,000 on dining, shopping, and excursions. Money they didn't have. They'd return in debt, counting on my savings to bail them out. That was why they wanted me tucked away in a care home, to seize my assets without the inconvenience of asking or feigning gratitude. I should head out, Lisa said, glancing at her watch. David gets antsy if we're not at the airport early. But Mom Eleanor, I can't thank you enough. You're the most generous person we know. She hugged me, her expensive perfume sharp, her makeup flawless, her silk scarf soft against my cheek. Everything about her was polished, perfect, and utterly false. Have an amazing time, I said. Don't worry about a thing here. Just enjoy. We will, she replied. And when we're back, let's plan something special for your birthday next month. Maybe that cute bistro downtown with the live piano. My birthday. Lisa had forgotten it for the past 3 years, only sending a belated card after David's nudge. Now she was planning celebrations, likely because she thought it might be my last one outside a facility. After she left, I watched her drive off in the SUV I'd helped them finance. The house felt different, less lonely, more serene. For the next 2 weeks, I wouldn't need to fake smiles when Lisa made sly comments about my age or memory. I wouldn't hear David's exasperated sighs when I asked for help with my laptop. I was free to be myself and, more crucially, free to protect myself. Patricia had given me a checklist to complete while they were gone. First, I'd visit the bank to remove Lisa's name from my emergency contact list. Second, I'd change the locks on my house, a precaution Patricia deemed essential. Third, I'd meet my financial advisor to transfer my investments into the new trust. But before any of that, I wanted to check my safe deposit box. George had always insisted we keep critical documents there, papers I hadn't touched in years. Something told me I'd need every weapon in my arsenal. As I grabbed my purse and keys, I caught my reflection in the hall mirror. My eyes were sharper, my posture straighter. The woman staring back wasn't a frail widow waiting to be pushed aside. She was Eleanor Mitchell, who'd worked 38 years, saved diligently, and planned for a future Lisa and David thought they could steal. They were about to learn how mistaken they were. After Lisa and David left for the airport, I drove to Community Trust Bank, where I'd banked for 28 years. The manager, Stephen Lynn, had overseen my accounts since George's passing. He greeted me with a smile that turned to concern when I asked for a private meeting. "Mrs. Mitchell, is everything okay? You seem troubled." I'd rehearsed this, knowing I had to tread carefully. "Stephen, I need to update my accounts. I want to remove my daughter-in-law as an emergency contact and beneficiary." His brow furrowed slightly. "Of course, we can handle that. May I ask why?" "Last time we spoke, you said Lisa was so helpful with your finances." That was my mistake. I'd been too eager to paint a picture of a perfect family, boasting about Lisa's involvement. Now I needed to rewrite that story without revealing too much. "I've decided to streamline things," I said carefully. "Keep my finances more private." Stephen nodded, sensing there was more, but not pressing. We spent an hour revising my accounts, removing Lisa's access, and adding new security measures. I also requested that any inquiries about my accounts go directly to me, with no information shared with family. "Mrs. Mitchell," Stephen said as we finished, "I hope it's okay to ask, but this feels sudden. If you're worried about financial manipulation, we have resources to assist." His kindness nearly broke me. For months, I'd felt isolated, questioning my own instincts. Having someone validate my concerns was a quiet relief. "Thank you, Stephen," I said. "I'm just being careful." My next stop was the locksmith. I'd never changed the locks in the 32 years I'd lived in this house, but Patricia Coleman had been adamant. "If they have keys and free access," she'd warned, "they could stage signs of confusion, moving items, hiding documents, even bringing in witnesses to see you in a contrived state of distress." That afternoon, the locksmith, a cheerful man named Tom, arrived. As he installed new deadbolts, he chatted about home security. "I've seen a rise in elder abuse cases lately," he said, tightening a screw. "Family members use their access to manipulate things. The worst part? Most seniors never suspect a thing. They trust their loved ones completely, right until it's too late." While Tom worked, I wandered through my house with fresh eyes. In the spare bedroom where Lisa and David stayed during visits, I found something I hadn't noticed before: a thin folder tucked beneath the mattress. Inside were printouts of assisted living facilities, notes in Lisa's precise handwriting cataloging my assets, house, savings, investments, with estimated values. There was even a business card for an attorney specializing in urgent guardianship cases. My hands trembled as I read her notes. She'd been plotting for months, maybe years. She'd calculated not just my net worth, but the monthly costs of care homes, the timeline for selling my house, and the tax benefits of inheriting my estate. One note sent a chill through me. Ease next doctor visit, raise memory concerns, push for formal diagnosis of decline. Lisa had planned to tag along to my next checkup, armed with fabricated stories of confusion, hoping to trick a doctor into documenting issues that didn't exist. I gathered the papers into a bag to show Patricia. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment scheme. It was a meticulously planned betrayal. Monday morning, I met with my financial advisor, Linda Carter. Like Stephen at the bank, Linda had worked with George and me for decades. A no-nonsense woman in her late 50s, she'd built her practice helping retirees and widows. Eleanor, Patricia Coleman called about your new trust, she said. She mentioned you're making big changes to your estate plan. That's right, I replied. I want to move my investments into the trust and update my beneficiary designations. Linda pulled up my accounts on her screen. David's currently the primary beneficiary on everything: your IRA, investment portfolio, and life insurance. Are you sure you want to change that? Absolutely, I said firmly. She raised an eyebrow. What's behind this shift? Last time we met, you were focused on helping David and Lisa with their financial goals. I'd anticipated this question. I've decided to rethink my legacy, I said carefully. I want my money to support causes I care about, not just go to family by default. Linda nodded thoughtfully. That's a smart approach. Not all heirs handle inheritance responsibly. We spent 2 hours restructuring my estate. I kept David as a beneficiary, but reduced his share to 20% of my estate. The rest would go to charities I'd long supported: the local animal rescue, a community literacy program, and a fund for low-income seniors needing medical or home care assistance. Eleanor, Linda said as we finished, this is one of the most thoughtful plans I've seen. You're balancing family support with causes that matter to you. If only she knew the real reason for my sudden altruism. But sitting there, making choices about my legacy, I felt a surge of pride. Lisa and David would still inherit a meaningful amount, but not everything, and not without proving genuine need and responsibility as the trust required. Tuesday brought an unexpected visitor. Megan, Lisa's cousin, rang my doorbell around noon. I'd braced for this, knowing Lisa had mentioned giving Megan my number, but seeing her on my porch still set my heart racing. Eleanor, I hope it's okay I stopped by, she said, her smile too bright. Lisa asked me to check on you while they're away, Megan said, standing on my porch with a foil-covered baking dish and a smile that mirrored Lisa's practiced charm. She was younger, maybe 33, with the same ash blonde hair and an overly concerned expression. That's kind of you, but I'm managing fine, I replied. Lisa was worried you'd feel lonely in this big house all by yourself. Mind if I come in for a bit? Refusing would seem rude, so I led her to the kitchen. Megan set the dish, a lasagna, she said, on the counter, her eyes scanning the room. They lingered on the framed family photos, the open bathroom door revealing my medicine cabinet, and the pile of mail by the sink. Lisa mentioned you've been having some memory lapses, she said, her tone casual but probing. Forgetting appointments, losing things, that must be unsettling. I kept my voice steady. I don't know what Lisa told you, but my memory's fine. She smiled, too sympathetically. Of course it is. Family can worry too much, you know. But it's good you have people looking out for you. Living alone at your age can be tough. Every word felt scripted, straight from Lisa's playbook. Megan was here to spy, searching for signs of confusion to bolster Lisa's case. Coffee, I offered, playing the gracious host. That'd be great, she said, settling in. I was just telling Lisa how lucky David is to have such a generous mom. That's $7,500 for their Italy trip. Not everyone would do that. She was fishing, hoping I'd slip up about my finances or show poor judgment. Family matters, I said simply, keeping my answer short. Megan stayed for nearly an hour, peppering me with questions about my daily routine, my health, my plans. She complimented my house repeatedly, noting how challenging it must be to maintain such a large property. She even offered to tidy up my medicine cabinet, claiming it looked a bit cluttered. After she left, I called Patricia Coleman immediately. She was conducting surveillance, Patricia said without hesitation. The memory, comments, the remarks about living alone, the offer to organize your medications. Those are textbook tactics to build a case for incompetence. She's gathering ammunition. What if she comes back? I asked. Be polite, but don't share anything. Don't let her in unsupervised, and absolutely keep her away from your medications or documents. And Eleanor, document everything she says, every detail she focuses on. That evening, I sat in my living room with a notebook, jotting down Megan's visit. The lasagna was just a pretext to get inside. Her questions about my memory were calculated probes. Her comments about the house's upkeep were laying the groundwork for why I needed assisted living. Lisa and David thought they were clever, using Megan as their spy while they basked in Italy on my dime. They probably pictured me alone, vulnerable, oblivious to their schemes. But I wasn't the helpless target they imagined. Every move they made was being recorded, every manipulation preserved for the legal fight ahead. They thought they were hunting a frail old woman. They'd walked into a trap set by someone with 70 years of hard-earned wisdom. Lisa and David returned from Italy on a Saturday evening, 2 weeks after they'd left. I'd spent those 14 days reshaping my life in ways they couldn't fathom. But when Lisa called Sunday morning, I slipped back into the role of the lonely, grateful mother-in-law they expected. Mom, Eleanor, we're back, she chirped. The trip was incredible. Venice was like a dream, and the Chianti vineyards were straight out of a film. We can't wait to show you the photos. I'm so glad you enjoyed it, I said warmly. I've been eager to hear all about it. We brought you gifts, a silk scarf from Florence, and some truffle oil from a little Tuscan village. Can we come by this afternoon? We're dying to share everything. They arrived at 2:00, tanned, relaxed, and brimming with self-satisfaction. Lisa practically sparkled as she stepped into my living room, draped in new clothes clearly bought on their Italian adventure. David looked more relaxed than I'd seen him in years, carrying bags of souvenirs and raving about the trattorias they'd visited. Mom, this trip was exactly what we needed, he said, hugging me warmly. We feel alive again. Thank you for making it happen. For a fleeting moment, his genuine joy reminded me of the little boy who'd beam when I tucked him in. I almost faltered, questioning my resolve. But then I heard Lisa's cruel laugh from that phone call, her cold plan to shuffle me into a care home, and my determination snapped back into place. I'm just glad you had a wonderful time, I said, accepting their gifts, a delicate silk scarf, likely pricey, and a bottle of truffle oil in an ornate glass vial. For a second, I wondered if I'd misread everything, if Lisa might actually care. Then she started talking. Mom, Eleanor, David, and I did a lot of thinking on this trip about family, about the future, about what's best for everyone. She settled onto my sofa with the confidence of someone delivering a rehearsed speech. We know it must be lonely in this big house all by yourself. Here it comes, I thought. And it's got to be tough keeping up with everything, she continued. The yard, the upkeep, all those little chores a house demands. David chimed in, his tone careful, like he was coaxing a child. Mom, there are some wonderful senior communities nearby. You'd have your own apartment, plus activities, social events, even medical support if you need it. We checked out some websites at the hotel, Lisa added, her voice brimming with enthusiasm. They look like resorts, group outings, shared meals, even shuttles for errands. I sat quietly, letting them build their case, watching the performance I'd anticipated for 2 weeks. They were so sure of themselves, convinced their Italian getaway gave them the leverage to rearrange my life. The best part is, you wouldn't have to worry about anything, Lisa went on. No more struggling with house maintenance or concerns about living alone. Staff would be there 24/7. It's the responsible choice, David added. Dad would want you taken care of properly. Mentioning George was a cheap shot, but I kept my face neutral. Those places sound costly, I said. Lisa and David exchanged a quick glance, a crack in their polished act. Well, yes, they can be, Lisa admitted, but your house is just sitting here, and you don't need all this space. The equity could cover years in a top-notch facility. Plus, David said, you've always wanted your money used wisely. This would be an investment in your comfort. I nodded, as if mulling it over. You've clearly thought this through. We have, Lisa said, her voice softening with feigned relief. We love you and just want what's best. We've even made some inquiries, David added, just to check availability and costs. Nothing set in stone. How thoughtful, I said. When were you thinking this might happen? David shifted, uneasy. Sooner, rather than later. These places often have wait lists, and at your age, it's better to settle in while you're still healthy. At my age. As if 70 meant I was teetering on the edge of oblivion. I see. Have you looked at specific places? Lisa's eyes lit up as she pulled out her phone. Yes, there's one called Bright Haven, just 15 minutes from us. You'd love it. There's a garden, a reading room, even a salon. She showed me glossy photos, stock images of smiling seniors in a bland, institutional setting, the kind of place where life quietly fades. It looks nice, I said evenly. What's the cost? About $3,800 a month for a basic unit, David replied. At $3,800 a month, Bright Haven would cost $45,600 a year. In 5 years, that was nearly $230,000 of my savings, locking me into a facility I'd never chosen. That sounds reasonable, I said, watching Lisa and David's faces light up with victory. So you'll consider it? Lisa asked, barely containing her excitement. Oh, I've done more than consider it. I've made my decision. The air in the room shifted. They leaned forward, expecting my capitulation. I've decided that anyone who plans to shove their mother into a care home while she's funding their Italian getaway doesn't deserve a penny of her money. Silence crashed over us. Lisa's jaw dropped and David blinked rapidly, as if the words hadn't registered. Mom, "What are you talking about?" he stammered. I reached into the side table drawer and pulled out a folder, neatly organized with the documents I'd found in their guest room, and a transcript of Lisa's phone call, prepared by Patricia Coleman's office like evidence for a trial. "I'm talking about this," I said, sliding the folder across the coffee table. "Your wife's research on assisted living facilities, her notes on my assets, her timeline for having me declared incompetent, and the phone call where she laughed about putting me in a home after I paid for your trip." Lisa's face drained of color, then flushed red. "You were spying on my private conversation?" "You forgot to hang up," I said calmly. "And it's not private when you're plotting to steal my life and my money." David grabbed the folder, his hands trembling as he scanned the pages. "Lisa, what is this? Notes about Mom's savings, guardianship proceedings. Did you write this?" "I was just exploring options," Lisa said, her voice desperate. "To be ready if you needed help. It's not what it looks like." "Really," I countered, "because it looks like you've been scheming to take my savings and lock me away while pretending it's for my benefit." "That's not, we'd never," Lisa faltered, her polished facade crumbling. "You said, and I quote, 'Once she pays for our trip, I'll stick her in a care home,'" I continued. "You laughed about how gullible I am, called me that old woman, and said you were tired of pretending to care about my stories." David looked like he might be sick. "Mom, if Lisa said that, I didn't know." "Actually, you did," I said, pulling out another page. "Your wife's notes say you were on board with the plan. You were tired of my calls and thought I needed professional supervision." The pain in David's eyes as he realized I knew his role was almost unbearable. Almost. "Mom, I didn't say it like that," he said weakly. "Maybe not those exact words, but you agreed to it," I said. "You let your wife manipulate me into giving up my independence so you could live off my savings." Lisa found her voice, her tone turning sharp. "Fine, maybe I said those things. But it's true, Eleanor. You're getting older. You forget things. You need more help than before. We were planning for what's inevitable." "Inevitable?" I repeated. "You mean the moment you could legally take my money?" "It's not stealing if it's family money," Lisa snapped, her true colors glaring. "David's your only child. That money should be ours. We're just ensuring it's handled responsibly." "Responsibly," I said, "like how you've managed your finances, always needing loans, living beyond your means, relying on me to bail you out." David stared at Lisa as if seeing her for the first time. "Lisa, how can you call it family money? It's Mom's. She earned it. She decides what happens to it." "Oh, come on," Lisa shot back, her voice bitter. "Don't act like you haven't complained about her calls, her repeated stories, her needing help with things she should manage herself. That's not the same as plotting to lock her away against her will," David said, his voice rising. Watching Lisa and David unravel was both satisfying and heartbreaking. My son and daughter-in-law tore into each other, exposing the cracks in their marriage, and I was both the catalyst and the victim. "Enough," I said, my voice cutting through their argument. They turned, startled, as if they'd forgotten I was there. "Mom," David began, but I raised a hand. "I want you both to leave, and I want you to hear this clearly. You'll never get another cent from me. You'll have no access to my accounts, my house, or my choices. If you try to have me declared incompetent, you'll find I've legally protected myself. And if you challenge my will, you'll discover most of my estate is going to charity." Lisa's face twisted with fury. You can't do this to us. We have kids to raise, a mortgage to pay. Watch me, I said, walking to the front door. Your financial troubles aren't my burden. Your bad choices aren't my fault, and your greed isn't my problem to fix. Mom, please, David said, his voice cracking. Can't we talk this out? For a moment, his pain tugged at me, but Lisa's cruel laughter echoed in my mind. The years of manipulation disguised as affection, the casual plan to discard me. The time for talking was before you treated me like a bank account with an annoying old woman attached, I said. Now it's time you learn to stand on your own. They left in silence. Lisa stormed to their SUV, while David glanced back, his face a mix of regret and loss. It might have been genuine, but it was too late. As they drove away, a weight lifted. For the first time in years, I felt peace. Not the hollow loneliness I'd known, but true calm. The confrontation I dreaded was over. I hadn't just survived. I'd triumphed. 6 months later, my life had transformed. The house, once oppressive in its quiet, now felt like a sanctuary. I woke when I wanted, cooked what I pleased, watched my shows without impatient sighs or distracted glances. Patricia Coleman's legal protections held firm. 2 weeks after that confrontation, Lisa and David tried to challenge my competency through a hired attorney. But Dr. Harper's thorough evaluation and the evidence of their scheming, Lisa's notes, the phone call transcript, made their case collapse. Their lawyer advised them to drop it to avoid elder abuse charges. I heard through friends that they struggled without my support. David took a second job, and Lisa returned to full-time work for the first time in years. Their Italian trip had been charged to credit cards they couldn't pay off. Without my safety net, they faced the consequences of their reckless spending. Part of me ached for David, but a larger part knew this was what they needed, to learn responsibility, something I'd enabled them to avoid for too long. The doorbell broke my thoughts. Through the window, I saw a young woman I didn't recognize, with a teenage girl beside her. Opening the door, I was met with a radiant smile. Grandma Eleanor. It was Sophie, my 16-year-old granddaughter, taller and more grown up than when I'd last seen her 9 months ago, but her eyes still held the warmth of her childhood. Sophie. I hugged her tightly, breathing in her familiar scent, feeling how much she'd grown. What are you doing here? This is my friend's mom, Mrs. Larson, Sophie said, nodding to the woman beside her. She drove me over because I really wanted to see you, Sophie said, gesturing to Mrs. Larson, who smiled warmly. Sophie's been talking about you nonstop, Mrs. Larson said. She asked if I could bring her by. I hope that's all right. Of course it is, I replied. Please, come in. As we settled in the living room, Sophie glanced around, her eyes wide. The house feels different, Grandma. Brighter, somehow. She was right. In the 6 months since the confrontation, I'd transformed the space to reflect me. Vibrant paint colors I loved, not the muted tones Lisa had favored. I'd hung local artwork, rearranged the furniture for comfort, and turned George's old study into a sewing nook where I'd rediscovered my passion for quilting. I've made some changes, I said. How about you, sweetheart? How's school? It's great, Sophie said. I made the varsity volleyball team, and I'm taking AP Literature, which I love. She paused, fidgeting with her hands. Grandma, I need to tell you something. I know what happened with Mom and Dad. My heart sank. Sophie, you don't need to worry about grown-up issues. No, I want to talk, she said, her eyes, George's eyes, flashing with determination. Mom told me and Ethan you cut them off because you were selfish, but Dad told me the truth about Mom's plan to put you in a care home, about the things she said. Mrs. Larson shifted, uneasy. Sophie, maybe this isn't... It's okay, I said, turning to Sophie. What did your dad say? He told me about the phone call you overheard, about Mom's research to take your money and put you away. He cried, Grandma. I've never seen him cry before. My throat tightened. Despite everything, knowing David felt remorse offered a sliver of comfort. He said Mom convinced him it was for your good, but he realized later how wrong it was. He wants to apologize, but thinks you'll never forgive him. What do you think about it all? I asked carefully. Sophie took a moment, choosing her words. I think what Mom planned was awful, and Dad should have stopped her. But I also think you made mistakes, Grandma. What kind? I asked, curious. You made it too easy for them to use you. Mom's always been manipulative, even with me and Ethan. She guilt trips you into doing what she wants. You kept giving in, so she kept pushing. Her insight stunned me. At 16, Sophie had pinpointed the dynamic that fueled Lisa's behavior for years. You're sharp, I said. I get that from you, she grinned. Mom always said I was too much like you, like it was a bad thing. I took it as a compliment. Mrs. Larson spoke gently. Sophie's been struggling at home. Her parents are having a tough time, arguing a lot, blaming each other. She asked to spend time with you, if you're open to it. I'd love that, I said instantly. But what about your parents? Will they mind? Dad said I can decide for myself, Sophie replied. Mom said some things I won't repeat, but I'm 16, Grandma. I get to choose who's in my life. We spent the afternoon talking, really talking, in a way we hadn't in years. Sophie shared stories about school, her friends, her dream of studying art history in college. I told her about the painting classes I'd started, the knitting club I'd joined, and my volunteering at the animal rescue. You seem different, Sophie said. Stronger, more you. I feel like me again, I admitted. I spent so long trying to be the perfect mom and grandma that I lost Eleanor. I'm finding her now. I like Eleanor, Sophie said firmly. A lot. As Mrs. Larson prepared to drive her home, Sophie hugged me tightly. Can I come back next weekend? Sophie asked, her eyes bright. Maybe even stay over sometimes. I'd love that, I said. But Sophie, I need you to know something. I'll always love your dad and hope we can rebuild something someday. But I'll never go back to how things were. I won't let anyone treat me like a bank account or a burden again. I wouldn't want you to, Sophie said firmly. You deserve better. After they left, I sat in my garden as the evening light faded, reflecting on Sophie's unexpected visit. Lisa had tried to cut me off from the kids, controlling my relationships as she had everything else. But Sophie, at 16, saw through the manipulation and chose to reconnect. The phone rang, and Patricia Coleman's name appeared. Eleanor, I have news, she said. Word through legal channels is that Lisa and David are divorcing. I wasn't shocked. Their financial struggles and broken trust had likely made their marriage untenable. How do you feel about that? Patricia asked. Sad for them, I said honestly, especially for Sophie and Ethan, but I don't feel guilty. Their problems are their own making. That's a healthy perspective, Patricia replied. One more thing. David's attorney contacted me. He wants to know if you'd meet with him privately. He's hoping to apologize and explore rebuilding your relationship. 6 months ago, I'd have jumped at the chance. desperate to mend things with my son. But I'd learned the difference between love and enabling, forgiveness and being a doormat. Tell his attorney I'm open to a meeting, I said, but with conditions. First, Lisa can't be involved. Second, any relationship we build must be based on mutual respect, not financial reliance. And third, he needs to understand trust takes time to restore. I'll pass that along, Patricia said. Eleanor, you've become one of my favorite clients. Your strength through this is inspiring. After hanging up, I wandered through my house, turning on lamps as night settled in. Every room reflected me now, my vibrant colors, my artwork, my sewing nook filled with half-finished quilts. The guest room, once hiding Lisa's betrayal, was now a cozy space for Sophie's visits. I thought of the woman I'd been 6 months ago, lonely, craving approval, sacrificing myself for one-sided relationships. That woman had feared being alone so much she'd let herself be used. But being alone wasn't loneliness. I had real friends now, from my painting class and knitting club, who valued me for me, not what I could give. I had hobbies that sparked joy, volunteer work at the animal rescue that gave me purpose. Most importantly, I had myself back, Eleanor, who'd worked 38 years, built a life with George, raised a son, and survived loss. The Eleanor who stood up when it counted. My phone pinged with a text from Sophie. Thanks for today, Grandma. Love you. Can't wait for next weekend. I smiled, replying, Love you too, sweetheart. I'll bake your favorite oatmeal raisin cookies. In the bathroom mirror, I caught my reflection. Gray hair, lines etched by time, but eyes alive with confidence and peace. This was a woman who knew her worth, who'd never again let others define her value. Lisa had been wrong about so much, but right about one thing. I'd changed. I was stronger, more myself than ever. The cheap charm bracelet she'd given me before their trip sat in my jewelry box, a reminder of her disregard. Beside it was a delicate silver pendant Sophie had bought with her babysitting money, engraved with Best Grandma Ever. Some people deserved the investment of love, others the strength of boundaries. I'd learned the difference. As I turned off the lights and slipped into bed, a deep contentment settled over me. Tomorrow held new possibilities, new projects, new connections, a life lived on my terms. At 70, I was just beginning.